Joe Cockrell joining out of Tampa, Florida. So this evening we're going to introduce what we have termed the pathways to purpose. All right. So in short order, I'll get to a little Q&A going on with, as you see in front of you, an outstanding panel of business advisors to NSOF who are each one of them very passionate about helping to pave the way for all our brothers and sisters out there who are on the hunt for meaningful careers following their service obligation. We got a lot of information we want to go through in the first half of the call, and I'll be facilitating that discussion with the panelists. But after that, like I mentioned, we definitely want to open the floor up to everybody out there, get you on the call, answer thoughts and questions with one another. So before we open up the floor, we also have the Q&A chat. Some of us are already using that, which is great. So as things are coming up, I mean, maybe somebody says something, maybe Kelly, maybe Tor has something that sparks something in your head, go ahead and jot it down in the chat or write it to yourself. But if you write it in the chat, we will make sure that we answer it. But you just give us a chance to get to it. So again, wherever you are on the transition journey, our objective, first and foremost, for this first webinar is to introduce NSOF as both a guide for you, as well as a resource to help you achieve whatever your goals are. And maybe you don't even know what those goals are yet, and that's all right too. So every one of us on this call, or several of us have been there where you are now. So as many of you have likely already learned wherever you are in your journey, there are a lot, and I emphasize a lot of veteran resources out there. Now that's that's a great thing, and it can be a really good thing. However, it can also be extremely overwhelming. That's what I found in my own transition, as well as I think everybody here could attest to. So therefore, that's what we've tried to do with these pathways to purpose, is we've tried to distill those down to some very specific pathways that we believe our members, that we know based on our members and advisors, we've vetted ourselves, right? We've either personally attended them or we've been a part of these organizations, in some ways, big or small. So ultimately, we hope that in talking about these pathways, we can help clear up some of the noise from all the abundant amount of resources out there. I do want to reiterate, this is our first webinar, right? So there's going to be some glitches. There's going to be some technical issues likely that we're going to work through. So I ask you to bear with us. And afterwards, we'll make sure that, or we would like to ask you to provide some feedback on how this went and how we can improve them going forward, right? For either yourself or others that'll join later on. We do want to make this a recurring thing. All right, so what are the pathways I'm referring to? Again, I want to be clear in saying that there's many other resources out there, okay? A lot of them, some of them complementary to the ones we'll mention, some of them completely unique, and that's all well and good. And a lot of us have a lot of knowledge on some of them as well. So we can talk to you. But again, we believe what's more effective is to distill down all of the millions of resources out there into a specific, something that's more manageable for you to digest. So it's not that we don't think anything else is good out there. There's a lot of other good stuff, and we can talk to some of those as well. But in order to narrow those down, we've settled on what we think is a solid grouping of these pathways that can help anyone from our community to get on the right trajectory towards career success, whether that be higher education, which we'll talk about through service to school pathway, a structured, maybe more structured executive education pathway that we'll talk about through a partner, the Honor Foundation. Some maybe just want access to a professional network and look for that next career. We kind of manage that through our Elite Meet partner. Understandably, many of you want to continue to serve out of uniform and stay within that DoD or contracting world. And we have our partner, and Mark Sanders here joining us from R3, who's a great resource for those wanting to do that, at least a resource to talk to, if nothing else. Others may be considering something completely foreign, but also extremely in demand, which is in the technology space, right? Maybe you want to explore going into more technology-focused roles. And we have a partner, shift.org, who also happens to be the founder of that, also prior EOD Tech. So they can be a great partner for us as well. So these pathways can all be found at nsof.org. And today we'll be weaving them into the discussion a little bit and just give you a little bit of a peek into each of these pathways. All right, so without further ado, we'll try to get this thing moving here. For those who don't know me, again, I'm Joe Cockrell. I retired out of the Navy EOD community in 2018, and I spent the majority of my career in Virginia Beach. When I retired, I wanted to move out of Virginia to the greatest state in the Union, which is, I believe, Tampa Bay, AKA Champa Bay. We've got the new name now, Champa Bay. We're officially going to rename ourselves after the GOAT moved down here and got his 7th ring last year. But I digress. I work currently as a process improvement manager within the performance consulting division of JP Morgan Chase. So if you're curious about what I do or anyone else on this call does at the end of it, lastly, I just want to say we highly encourage you to ping any of us on LinkedIn or via email. If you've got my phone number, call me, text me, whatever. All right, I think that kind of wraps up my opening blurb there. So let me pass it over to one of the fine gentlemen joining us today here, who I've had the honor to serve with myself, Mr. Kelly Lombard.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Hey, everybody. Kelly Lombard, did 6 years in Navy EOD, all out of Mobile Unit 6. As Joe said, we worked together, did deployment to Africa, did a few others as well. Got out of the Navy in 2018, worked briefly at JP Morgan as well, but I was on the equity trading floor. Decided that wanted to go back, get my MBA, so pursued that path at the Wharton School. Graduated in May and am now at Bain & Company as a management consultant.
Excellent, Kelly. I'll just pass it over to Brage. How about you, Brage?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Brage Garofalo. I did not serve in the military, but my father served in the Army. I have been involved in the veteran transition space for a little over 9 years. I have done a lot of work in the mentoring space, specifically helping to build and develop the mentor program at the Honor Foundation, and where I serve as also a mentor and a coach. And I am especially passionate about the EOD diver community because there's just something very special about all of you that really resonates with me. For my day job, I currently serve as a program lead, a director over at AbbVie Pharmaceuticals, doing research in both oncology and neurodegenerative diseases. But I do want to make a plug for SkillBridge. For those of you who are interested in participating in the SkillBridge program is through the DoD. My company is very involved in that, and I would love to talk to you more about it because you don't necessarily have to have a science degree to work at a pharmaceutical company. And if you've got questions about your transition, happy to talk to you about that as well. So it's an honor to be here. Looking forward to talking with all of you. Tor?
Thanks, Brage. My name is Tor Gould. I left EOD back in 2015. I spent almost 6 years all on the West Coast, Mobile Unit 3, and then Det Southwest. When I got out, I moved back here to Miami, based out of South Florida, which helped kind of my transition story. Happy to go into that later. But I joined Goldman Sachs originally kind of stumbled into it, on our management team, helping our Florida private wealth business, became the chief operating officer for Florida and Latin America private wealth, and now am actually a private wealth advisor focused 100% of my time on clients, ultra high net worth, business owners, entrepreneurs, helping them navigate everything from managing assets to sale process of a company, going public, things like that. Always happy to take any questions offline as well, just like everyone else here. The reason, like Kelly and Joe and everyone and Mark sort of say, I got here because of helping hands, through my transition, both in EOD and externally. So I always want to help and give back. Turn over to Mike.
Hey group, Mike Hudson here. I am in Atlanta, Georgia. I have been in and around the SOF community for the last 10 years. I'm a civilian, quote, by trade, but have just developed a really strong passion for being in and around you all. Just like Brage, have been heavily involved with the Honor Foundation in the past, as well as some other organizations, have a strong passion for mentoring and coaching and have served on a number of boards. I'm at Wells Fargo. I'm in a chief operating officer role within consumer lending, and just would like to echo everybody else's comments. Feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. Happy to have exploratory conversations, help with resumes, just help you figure out what next steps are, all that stuff. I think you'll find that from all of us here. So Mark, I think you're last on the docket, my friend.
There we go. Thanks, guys. Hey, I see a few names on the chat that I recognize, so that's good. I retired in 2010. I did a full career, 21 years. Was fortunate to have command, deployed to combat in Iraq with Task Force Troy, did some diving tours as well at the Experimental Diving Unit. Left the service in 2010, and much like many of you, had a lot of choices, a lot of decisions. I didn't have the good fortune of as many resources as we have now, but I decided to go into government contracting and was one of the founders of R3. And so we did the bootstrap and the 80-hour weeks, and we're now fortunate to have a company of about 170 people with about 100 EOD techs in it. And so in that process, I've seen a lot of guys transition who have come to work alongside me in a new capacity. And I've also had the good fortune to mentor a lot of people who have transitioned. And so you're not alone. You're not the first one to leave the service. It may feel that way, but we have a lot of resources to help you, and this is just one of them. So look forward to talking throughout the presentation.
Thanks, Mark. And Mark's pretty humble. I think just being in this space, this NSOF space for the last few years and getting to work with a lot of different companies and a lot of different former and current people, I can say, Mark has, I believe, from my perspective, my vantage point, done more for the Navy EOD community than any other individual, and his company, of course, as well in that. So I appreciate, Mark, everything you do for everybody in the community. So kick over a question to each one of our panelists, right? So kind of some predetermined questions here. So, and then we will open it up after that, as I mentioned, to the kind of open Q&A. Just field whatever y'all got. So, but I want to start off with this, some predetermined questions, make our guys sound and lady sound very smart. So Kelly, I'm going to start off with you, buddy. So you separated from EOD a few years back as an E5, right? I believe E5, maybe E6, but worked under me for a little while. You managed to get accepted and graduate with an MBA from one of the most prestigious business schools in the country, right? What are the top 2 or 3 considerations for guys and gals out there who may be wondering about that higher education pathway? I mean, can you tell us a little bit about how your transition went and what resources you kind of leaned on to make the jump you did into the consulting world?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of ways to do education, whether it's undergrad, grad school, and there's a lot of ways to do it wrong. So I think some of the ways I've seen it done right by people, and based on my own experience, is to really focus on 3 things as you start to think about transitioning out and maybe pursuing education. I think number 1 is the why. Why are you going to school? 2 is the benefits that are available to you and understanding those. And 3 is what's your story? How are you actually going to sell yourself to the institution that you're applying to? So kind of dive into those in a little bit more detail, starting with the why. I think, a lot of people will look at education and maybe write it off. Maybe you did your 20 years in the Navy, maybe you just did 6 years in EOD like me. But when you look at potential careers after, some of those require, an education, whether that's getting your undergrad and finishing it, or potentially getting a higher education degree, MBA. Maybe you want to go back and be a PA, lawyer, doctor. So having a clear understanding of where you want to be, and then working backwards from there and understanding the different requirements that are needed to get to that point, I think really will set you up for success. And once you do that, you can start to narrow down the different education pathways that you're going to look at. For undergrad, if you want to be, go get your MBA, maybe you want to finish your undergrad before you get out of the Navy so you can transition directly into the MBA. Potentially, you want to go get your PA. Maybe there's different things that you have to be out of the Navy for location, whatever. You need to go and get those prerequisites. But the key thing here is to understand, not specifically what you want to do, but have an idea of where you might want to go and try to narrow down the education choices so that you're picking the right institution for you. I think too, on that benefits, a lot of people will see the price tag on some of these education opportunities. I think the MBA was like $200,000 for 2 years, like something incredibly insane. The military does a lot to pay for that. There's post 9/11 GI Bill that will pay up to the highest amount for the in-state tuition. Schools can match that with what's called a yellow ribbon program. And then there's also another program not many people are aware of called Vocational Rehab. For better or for worse, a lot of EOD people have a disability through the VA when they get out. If you have 20% or higher disability rating, you can actually get your education paid for 100%. So I didn't have to pay a dime for my MBA, and they actually gave me BAH while I was going to pursue my education. So again, understand those benefits. What are the timelines that you need to apply for them? What are the criteria that you need to meet to access them? Because the last thing you want to do is write off an option for education when there's a great resource out there that can actually pay you to go to school. And I think third, and this would be the most important, that people don't appreciate, it's just your story. We now understand, why you want to go to school, but you need to communicate that to the actual institution. A lot of people get out and you're like, oh, I'm in EOD tech, I had this great career, and that's great. But these are very competitive programs, and for every EOD person applying, there's 2 SEALs, 3 Green Berets, and 4 Army Rangers who are also competing for that same spot. Depending on what program you want to get into, the more high-ranked program, the more this will matter. But having that story really tight is very important, and that's where I think some of the resources that Joe mentioned can really be important. And I think first and foremost among them is servicetoschool.org. Really encourage everyone to go and look at it. It's a great website and group of people. Pretty much they will match you with a mentor, somebody who did the program that you are looking to apply to at a top institution, who can help walk you through all the steps that I just talked about. So resume review, test prep if you need it. There will be discount codes on there. It's just a great resource to help you understand what you're getting into and what you need to do and how to communicate your background to academia. And finally, don't underestimate the network. I know Joe mentioned this, and so did Tor. I would not have been able to get into Wharton without the help of other EOD, SEAL, Green Beret people who went before me and were at the programs. I reached out to them, said, hey, what's the deal? And they really held my hand throughout the application process. And they'll do that, at any school for you. You just have to reach out. So I think, Joe, those are the main criteria that I would look for.
Thanks, brother. Yeah, good stuff. I love the 3 things you mentioned there. The why, the benefits, and the story. I think that's great way to summarize that. So, all right, thanks, Kelly. Brage, while not a veteran yourself, it's no secret. I know for me personally, no secret your passion for helping service members. People from our community succeed in their transition, specifically the special operations community, right? What do you see from your lens the biggest struggle to overcome for guys and gals in our shoes after hundreds, probably more than that, maybe thousands of one-on-one coaching sessions with so many of us?
So the 3 biggest challenges that I see consistently is the first is around planning. So a lot of times it's not clear how far in advance you need to be planning your transition. Waiting 6 months before you hit terminal and out the door is your hair is going to be on fire looking for a job. So really the sweet spot is anywhere between 18 to 24 months. And I know that 2 years out seems like a long time, but it goes really quickly. 12 to 18 months is also a good timing point. And this really allows you to have the time and the luxury to start thinking about what it is you want to do on the other side of your military career. If you want to go to school, if you want to start a business, if you want to start looking for a job in the corporate sector, and then what that looks like, what types of roles, and to really do your due diligence. So really, the more time that you spend planning, the more successful the outcome will be for you, and it won't be, a hair on fire kind of situation where you'll take whatever comes your way just simply because you need to have a job, which we don't want to do. Another challenge is networking. A lot of folks are not entirely clear on how to network, or it's a little bit outside of their comfort zone because they've never had to do it. And in all honesty, you're expected to make small talk with potentially a stranger, which can be a little awkward. So I think it's important to make sure that you're reaching out for those informational discussions so that you can do your due diligence as part of your planning and really understand where it is you want to go, or to the contrary, maybe what you don't want to be doing, which is just as important to identify. And then, being able to build those relationships, because these are people that if you keep these relationships going and keep them warm, so to speak, these are people that you will have as part of your network throughout the course of your career. And always remember that when you're talking to somebody, they know people who know people. So if you want to have an informational discussion with Mike and he says, oh, you need to talk to Brage, and you're like, but I'm not interested in pharmaceuticals, that's okay. But remember, I know people who know people in all different types of industries and backgrounds. So really, the one piece of advice that I always give my folks is you open every door, you talk to everybody, because you never know where that conversation is going to lead. And then really the third challenge is, and a little bit to what Mark was saying earlier, is you don't have to do this alone. You are not alone. Not only do you have NSOF here to support you, but there are numerous organizations that are out here for the sole reason to help support you in your transition. And I hear a lot that, the folks didn't know that one organization or another didn't exist until we had talked about it. So really don't feel like that you ever have to go through any of this alone, because you will always have somebody who has their hand on your back that's going to help guide you and be there to support you. And then the last piece really is around mentoring. And I could go on and talk about mentoring for days, but the one thing that I will say is that find mentors. So there's American Corporate Partners, there's Veterati, there's eMentor, and you'll have, if you end up going through the Honor Foundation or Commit, they've got coaches and mentors as well. Really build your mentor tribe, because these are people who will all bring something very different and very unique to your transition, and be able to provide you with not just their lens of what their experience has been, but also to share their scar tissue with you, so that they can say, when I was starting out, I did this, don't do that. So do this, don't do that. Do as I say, not as I did. And I think that's going to be really important, and that will take you a long way with your transition as well.
Excellent, Bridge. Thank you. Yeah, good stuff. All right, push it over to you, Mark. You're well known within the Navy EOD community as someone who's both managed to find a lot of success as a military leader, like you said, a command military leader in the community, but then post-military service, right, as a business leader. And your focus, you took the focus, with some of your comrades there into the EOD contracting realm, right? What would be your advice for the men and women coming out of the NSO community that are thinking about kind of, again, sort of like I mentioned earlier, sort of hanging up the uniform, but wanting to stay in that space, and continuing to serve just in a little bit of a different way? What kind of thoughts would you have in that for those people?
Sure. So leaving the service is a stressful time. It's a period of anxiety, trepidation, uncertainty, doubt, and that doesn't matter if you do 30 years and you term out or you do 5 or 6. It's still a lot. One of the things I've seen that's effective of guys who want to go into government contracting is that it is a known entity and it's a great transition. I really believe, and I tell everyone that in your first year of transition out of uniform, you should expect to take time to find your way. And if you have the opportunity to do government contracting as a diver or as an EOD tech, for example, you're definitely going to be in and around a tribe, which is very important when you leave the service and you ultimately find where you work, where you want to work long term. And it also allows for that transition to occur. So a couple things here. I know guys are taking notes, but just a couple real specific things. Most of this government contracting requires a security clearance. So it's very important that as you leave the service, you're tracking on your security clearance, you're tracking on when your PR is up. And then if you are going to come into government contracting, if you do so in a couple years after you've left, a lot of those doors will be closed because after the days of Snowden, security clearances get wiped after a year, and you'll be right back at SF-86, which makes you unhireable. Also, understand too, there's kind of a dichotomy, at least for badge wearers, EOD badge wearers in government contracting. There's the EOD support that you probably see at some of your units, which is mostly training, logistics, and maintenance type support. And then there's also unexploded ordnance support, what some people refer to as the migrant bomb pickers and those types of terms. If you're interested in the latter, UXO type support, it gives great geographic flexibility. A lot of those jobs are short duration, from a matter of a couple weeks to a couple months. And they are fantastic if you're doing some kind of online learning or something that gives you some geographic agnostic aspect of where you live. And if you're interested in that, take a look at Department of Defense Explosive Safety Board, DDESB, Technical Paper 18. Just do a search for that and pull it down. And you can translate a lot of your active duty military EOD time and qualifications directly into the UXO, Unexploded Ordnance Technician 1, 2, and 3, and the UXO supervisor work. And I can connect you with some people if you're interested in that. And then also take a look at the National Association of Ordnance Contractors, NAOC, and start there and then circle back with me with questions. If you're interested in doing traditional EOD contracting work, understand that that's going to be primarily in San Diego, Virginia Beach, or Indian Head. So if you're moving back to Oklahoma, that's probably not going to work for you. I would also encourage that if you're going to apply for EOD contracting type jobs, a few things that you want to understand. Ask if that job and the company that has an opening for it, if that's actually a position or if that is a contingent position. A lot of companies have job opportunities on their websites for contracts that they are seeking to win but haven't won. And that's called a contingent position, which means it isn't really a job. It's the potential for a job. And oftentimes they show their ability to do it, and so they'll collect resumes for it. Secondly, if you are going to pursue an EOD contracting job that is an actual job, ask that employer, R3 or whoever it is, ask them how long that contract is for. All these contracts have finite periods with them, and you'd want to know if you're going to take a job on a contract that's a 5-year contract that's 4.5 years into it, because you may find yourself challenged a bit down the road. So that's a few highlights there. I think part of this kickoff here is just to put some names with some faces on these different pathways. So you have my name and my face now, and I've got about 100 EOD techs, many of whom you've worked with, that I'm going to turn you on to when you ask me for questions. So thanks. Over.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. All right. So Mike, over to you. So you have been in the finance sector, as you mentioned, for many, many years, operating at that COO level with Wells Fargo. You found a great deal of success there. And like Brage, you've been a huge advocate for a great many of us transitioning veterans. So speaking from your experience at your company, specifically, what difficulties have you most often seen with people struggling with in terms of, specifically in the terms of their translation of skills from, essentially guns and bombs to the corporate sector.
Yeah.
What do you think, Mike?
I got 4 points. Kind of picking up where Brage left off. First of all, would echo what she said. You all will find jobs. I've worked with probably 40 guys over the last 10 years on a coaching and mentoring level. Every one of them found a job. So as stressful as it is for you all, and Mark touched on that, you all will find jobs. It's a process, just like you becoming a diver or an EOD guy. So a couple of things. One, resume. You all are going to get a lot of conflicting advice on resumes. Some people are going to tell you 4 pages. Some people are going to tell you 1 page. Some people are going to tell you to load your resume up with jargon. Other people are going to tell you to take all the jargon off. Your head's going to be spinning. At some point, you probably stop asking people for their advice on resumes. Here's what I would say on the resume. If you're going into the DoD sector, load your resume up with jargon. They're going to want to see your security clearance. They're going to want to know all of your positions and all of the specifics. If you're wanting to come to Wells, you're wanting to go to Goldman, you're wanting to go to Bain, you got to strip all that out. Simply because even if you come to me, which I'm happy to talk to every single person on the phone, I'm going to talk to you and then I'm going to put you in touch with our military recruiter. And that's probably going to be the last person that you talk to that knows about your background. And so 99.9% of the people that you're going to talk to after that are civilians. And so what I say is 2 pages, because people get lazy and somebody's going to look at your resume for about 15 seconds. And if they can't place you in their mind, in their company as to where you would fit, they're going to move on because people are lazy. So 2 pages, get the jargon off the resume and word prune. Like less is more in terms of your writing your resume. And I see this all the time. I just saw this past weekend. I managed $2.5 million of bomb equipment in my last job. Great. Did you lose it? Like, what happened to it? So, if you're going to put on the responsibilities that you all have had, which all of you have had a lot of responsibility, you've got to point out, how you made it better, right? It's from sort of what Joe does, a process improvement perspective. So resume, 2 pages, get the jargon out. I use a term called civilian hooks. It kind of touches on the 99.9% of the people that you talk to are civilians. So you've got to be able to translate your experience on the resume to what it is that you can do for that company. And so what I like to see on the resume that, again, turns into conversation is 6, 7, 8 bullet points that really accentuate what you think your brand is. Great problem solver, strong leader, effective collaborator across functional lines, those types of things. And then your experiences have to talk to that. And I call those civilian hooks. If you're interested, getting a PMP, going to yellow belt training, those types of things are going to jump out at potential hiring managers as civilian hooks. They're going to be able to place those in their brain to move you along their company. As Brage said, you're going to talk to somebody that's going to point you to another person, and you're going to be on this journey. The third is prep. I've got a lot of horror stories that I could sit and talk to you about guys that have not prepped for conversations, get caught off guard. They don't do their due diligence. They don't know who they're talking to. You got to do your prep work, especially if one of your buddies, one of your mentors, somebody in your network has introduced you to one of their colleagues or their manager, and you don't prep. That's obviously going to look really poorly on the person that introduced you to that particular person that you're talking to. So do your prep work. Get on LinkedIn. See who that person is. What's their background? That should be kind of place number 1. The company that you're talking to. Know some basics, right? If you don't want to move to Wichita, Kansas, and the company is based in Wichita, then you probably want to know that going in. So do your prep work. And then just like Kelly was talking about from an education standpoint, you've got to be able to anticipate the questions that you're going to ask. So you're going to get on the phone with Brage, and she's going to say, what do you want to do? And it's going to be the first question out of anybody's mouth. What do you want to do? And if you say, I'm up for anything, or I don't know, you've now put all of the pressure back on that person you're talking to Now they've got to figure out what they're going to do with you. Versus if you go in and say, listen, I want to be in operations. You come to me and you say, listen, you're in a COO role at Wells Fargo. I want to be in operations. I'd love to do process improvement. I'd like to do project work. Now you've taken the pressure off me, because now I'm going to say, well, Kelly's the guy that runs all my programs. Go talk to him. And I've got a peer that's got 1,800 people that work for him in operations. I'm going to put you in touch with James. You got to make it easy. And the more you can be answering specifically the why, the easier you're going to make it on the person you're talking to move you along in the process. Otherwise, now you've put all the pressure on me, and I'm probably going to bail because I don't know what to do with you, because you haven't given me anything, right? You said I'm up for anything, and then that means, that you've put all the pressure on me to, for me to figure that out. So again, there's a lot more to this conversation, just like there is with all the other topics we're covering here. Again, I guess I come from a bit of the school of hard knocks, where I see major failure points, within my company and other large ones where people make the mistakes that I've just covered.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Good stuff. So Tor, like Kelly, you're another great success story, I think, in terms of being able to separate after giving some good years to the EOD community and really finding your niche in the wealth advising game. Looking back at your own transition experience from now, right? Looking back now where you are now, what would you have done different? And maybe nothing, but where do you see NSOF specifically being able to provide the most tangible support to the operators in the NSO community?
Yeah, so I'll caveat this with, I did everything wrong that Michael and Brage and Kelly were talking about, right? So everything, like, we've already touched upon a lot of this stuff, so I'll kind of keep it brief. But I did a lot of things wrong. But I'd say it kind of crystallizes around, like Michael alluded to, have a focus, have a story, and look, informal is still formal. And I'll get to how NSOF can work there. So have a focus, just like Mike was just talking about. When I was having conversations, oh, what do you want to do? Well, I don't know. I kind of want to get a job, right? Like, I want to work. I want to work here, I think. And a focus could mean a few different things, but having one thing that did help me, and there's people will tell you to read books like What Colors My Parachutes, things like that. But having a focus really helps crystallize, you need to do some searching into what you want to do and where you want to be, right? Because if you say, hey, I want to be in investment banking, but I want to live in Miami, Florida, well, those two things don't jive, right? There's no investment banking down here. But most of that's in New York or San Francisco. But if you say, look, I want to be in Miami, and you start looking out there, it kind of helps narrow your focus into what's available. So it helps you do some searching into what's really the opportunity set. It helps you be self-aware into what you want to do. And then it helps you, as you have these conversations, it's only one part, it helps narrow down that specific ask that Mike was talking about. When you can go to someone and you're having a conversation with this, I want to be here and I want to do this. Can you help me? Or does your firm or company have a role like this? It makes it that much easier to get you plugged in right where those opportunities are. So for me, just quick anecdote, I was focused being back here in Florida. My family's from here, my wife's from here. That's where I wanted to be. A lot of guys, I didn't want to go back to school because I didn't want to stop getting a paycheck. So I knew I wanted to, go straight into working. I kind of, as the good thing about the whole timing thing that Briggs talked about, starting early, with 12 months out, you have a lot of time to have conversations with people just to get an idea of what's out there. I ruled out pretty quickly a few companies because conversations weren't that great on my end. I just didn't think they were interesting. I kind of narrowed down into consulting, like Kelly, and then finance. I went through a process with a consulting firm. It was great, but then realized that I wanted a different balance and I didn't want to be traveling all the time on the road, which now I am. So, that focus is something, though, is really important, right? Like, have that focus. Have a story. I mean, again, I think Kelly handled it too. On the timing wise, you're going to now have time to perfect that story. It takes time over and over again. I'm still perfecting mine when I'm out there trying to find clients, which is every day in my life now. But ultimately, it's something that's not comfortable or normal, I think, for guys in the community. Essentially, you're out there selling yourself, right? Your job now is to go find a companies to sell yourself. What do you bring to the table? To do that, you need to know what you are good at, what you're not good at, what you want to do, and then find a way of coherently putting that together and talking about it. Whether it's with other people in the community, your network, people you get connected to, things like that. As Mike, it starts sometimes with the resume, right? Maybe you call me and say, hey, look, Tor, you want to go talk to someone at Goldman, whether it's wealth management, investment banking, whatever. Great. I need something tangible to send. It's a resume. That's a great way of starting. My resume, I look back now, I kind of shudder at what it looked like, but it helps you start to think about telling your story. Informal is formal. It's something I didn't really realize probably until much later anyways, because ultimately in this world, you're a little bit, I'm not gonna say always on, but you are, right? Even when you're having informal conversations, people, first time you meet someone, they're evaluating you. Do they think you're inquisitive? Do you think that you're well spoken in what you want, or you're searching for what you're looking for and handling your process well? That's not to say that if you call me and we've known each other, yes, it's going to be a lot more informal than if you're talking to a hiring manager like I used to be, but informal is still formal in the fact that you want to make sure that you are presenting the best self when you're having these conversations, even if they're informative on your end. One way of doing that is, look, every single person does this getting out, especially if you're leaving the contracting world, like losing things like jargon, right? I think the first few times I went on an interview, hey, what did you do in the Navy? I was an EOD tech. Oh, what's that? I was explosive ordnance disposal. Oh, what's that? And finally, after 8 months of getting tired of answering that question, I just said, look, I was a Navy bomb tech, right? We were a Navy bomb squad. Maybe it doesn't sound as glamorous as special operations or EOD or anything like that, but you got to remember, you're oftentimes, by the time you get to those people that are making decisions, maybe they're a vet, maybe they're not. Maybe they know what you do, maybe they don't. But you want to build a connection very quickly. So getting rid of some of that informal jargon, military jargon, helps if you're leaving that world. It's like resources. Where does NSOF fit in? I think, look, it's a great place to find out everything that is available to you, right? When I got out, there were a few things like Commit Foundation was someone I'd talked to, or someone had told me to look into, Honor Foundation. But here you have a kind of one-stop shop of touching a network that knows who you are, what you've done, and can help no matter what. I stumbled through it a little bit. For example, my resources I kind of had to figure out. I kind of found through the phone tree when I was doing case prep for consulting. A guy at Wharton was a SEAL who said, "Yeah, I'll take you on and we'll do some cases together." But he had his own. He was a student and he was busy. Same thing, UCSD. I found my way into there, things like that. But here you have this kind of one-stop shop to really use a network that's now already established and use it to your disposal. So.
All right, yeah, man. Thanks, Tor. Yeah, it's I like some of the stuff you're bringing up there. Especially about, and I've heard, so now we've heard, I think, from at least Tor and Kelly. I know that my ears perked up with the being able to tell that story, and couldn't agree more. And when I think of Tor, what you were just saying about EOD and special operations, right? I mean, that was the genesis of Navy Special Operations Foundations for that reason, because nobody understands what explosive ordnance disposal is. Period. You can, and everybody on this call, I mean, if you're part of EOD, you know that, right? Whether even if you're a diver, you know that too. So that is the genesis of Navy Special Operations Foundation. That is what we do. And that is what people relate to, whether they even think that if they know what they're talking about or not, they understand when you say special operations. To Tor's point, they understand bomb tech too, but special operations is something that is something that people can sit there and understand. Okay, you were a unique small percentage of the entire armed forces. They don't understand that when you say EOD. They just don't. And anybody that thinks that they do, I would politely say you're wrong. So anyway, so at this point, Susanna, if we can open it up, that kind of concludes sort of our predetermined webinar, if you will. But we want to open it up now to the questions, Susanna. So I don't, again, reiterate this is first webinar, but Susanna, can you open this up now to let people unmute and mute themselves and that type of stuff, and we get the gallery opened up? So I'll start with a few there. I know a couple of the folks here, panelists, like answered a couple of these, but just to kind of hear from them, you know, what they have to say to it. So one question here from Jared, you know, Kelly, do you have literature, resources on different types of consulting? And then sort of a segue, you know, why management consulting for you personally?
Yeah, through a link in the chat. I think this is something you can probably get to at a high level, just doing some research online. There's a lot of different kind of consulting out there, and that term is thrown around very loosely. You know, high level, I think there's, you know, management strategy, helping companies understand, you know, how to respond to kind of threats or opportunities in the market, and orient their strategy to kind of take advantage of that. Then you have like more technical consulting. So, you know, implementing a new software. For that, you kind of need like a computer background potentially. So another thing you could go back to school for. And then there's just like, you know, people consulting, like going into a company. You know, Joe, you could probably say you're an internal consultant to JP Morgan in a lot of regards. But I think why I went into consulting, you know, did a stop at JP Morgan, really enjoyed the company, but for me, finance was a little bit more hierarchical than I was used to during my time in the Navy, especially in EOD. So I was looking for something that I was going to work with a small team, work with really smart people on like a very constantly evolving problem. So normally my projects last anywhere from, you know, 2 to 3 weeks to 3 months, working with different companies, constantly shifting teams. So I found that pretty exciting. Steep learning curve, which is what I was looking for getting out of the Navy, so that you can plug in eventually when I figure out what I want to do when I grow up, make a jump to maybe the corporate side or private equity or something like that.
All right, cool. Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, and I think you know, just really generally, broadly speaking, like I mentioned before, I mean, I'm a performance improvement, process improvement manager within JP Morgan internally. So a little different than what Kelly does, you know, going into other companies. JP Morgan Chase kind of, you know, is big enough to where they, you know, have their own internal consultancy division. But I think, you know, broadly speaking, I think a lot of us, most of us, given what we did in our careers, we are, I believe we're kind of inclined, naturally, there's a natural inclination towards consulting, because what consulting is really about is about improving processes. It's about making things more efficient, eliminating waste, driving better results, making people more profitable, right? And I think if you look through the career of a Navy EOD tech, you know, anybody within special operations, it's that. I mean, that is what we do. I mean, it's what we, whether you were thinking about it consciously when you were doing it in your career, that is what we were doing. And now looking back now and being able to translate those skills and those anecdotes and stories into what, you know, into JP Morgan Chase, they're really kind of, they happen sort of naturally. So again, I think we're just sort of, we're naturally inclined to be, we're constantly always evolving in our job within special operations, whether it's a new tool, a new TTP, new tactics, we're constantly trying to be better than the enemy. And if you look at it, if you just compare that and translate that to a business context, whatever business you're talking about, they're wanting to get better than their competitor. So I think we kind of are just naturally inclined into that level of thinking. But so another question here, you know, you know, this question, I'm anal about preparation, but yet retiring in August, and I've not been able to do enough prepping really due to some medical issues, maybe they're operational issues, whatever have you. So, you know, I mean, Brave, what do you think about that? Somebody that's thinking they're behind the power curve. I mean, what would be your suggestion to them if they think they've gotten a late start to that 12 to 18 month optimal time they have?
So this is where I was speaking to your hair is going to be a little bit on fire. If you have an idea of where you want to go, then we can start having that conversation to start paving the way. If you're not sure, we try to condense that 12 to 18 month process into a shorter amount of time so that we can start working on your resume, working on your LinkedIn, crafting your 30-second elevator speech, which I know that the other guys were talking about in terms of branding and being able to tell your story and being able to very succinctly say, this is what I've done, this is where I'm going, this is where I want to go, and this is how I'm going to solve your problems for your organization. And there's other organizations that can help you. So any number of us, all of us, would be more than happy to sit down and help you plot and plan. But there's also the Commit Foundation that can pair you up with a coach and a mentor that can help. And they do a lot of their services that are a la carte, so to speak. So you can work on your resume, you can work on your LinkedIn, you can practice interviewing. And then again, with the mentor piece, which I will just beat this into the ground, having mentors to be able to help guide you and help you plan and to be able to think about different things is going to be really important. So reach out to American Corporate Partners or eMentor or Veterati and get matched with somebody with a background that is within the area that you're looking for so that they can also help you plan, because the more people you have in your village to help you, the more successful you'll be, because everybody, like I said, brings something to the table that's going to help you in the long run.
Yeah, I would just add maybe a little on top of that. Brage has talked about hair being on fire a couple of times. The processes that we're talking to you all about today assume that you all have plenty of time left and you're just starting your transition. And if you're 3 months out and your hair's on fire and you're even more stressed, that's totally fine. One of the things that somebody like a Brage or I or any of the other folks who are on the call are going to ask you is, okay, so what happens the day after you separate? Like, do you have a source of income? Do you have money saved? Or is it going to be, I need a paycheck the 2 weeks after I get out of the Navy or I'm hosed? And it's really important when you start working with a mentor or coach or whoever to really describe the situation that you're going to be in right after you get out. I had a guy call me literally right before this call. He's 30-year plus Marine gunnery sergeant. He's taken his time. So even though he's out, he's got money set aside to allow him to transition to his next role in a low stress type of situation. Not everybody has that luxury. So if you come to Brage or you come to me as an example and we ask you that, if you say, I'm hosed in 3 months and 2 weeks, then we're going to take a different course that's probably going to look more like, let's find you a job, because we don't have the luxury of 9 months of LinkedIn work, right? And listen, Brage and I are used to that. We're happy to do it. It's not the most ideal situation, but I don't want anybody on the call here thinking, well, geez, Brage said I had to be 12 months out. I'm sitting here totally stressed out now because I'm 6 months and nobody here at NSOF's going to want to work with us. Come find us. We're just going to take a bit more of a different course that's going to feel a bit more urgent and take some of these steps out of the process, because you need a job to feed your family. So I would just add that on top of the Brage, what you were saying.
Yeah, good stuff, Mike. Another one on here, where can I go with my resume and mention what I actually enjoy doing to recommend possible job suggestions? So I don't know if somebody on the call can expand on that, but I guess in my simplest way I would refer to that as, I wouldn't look to my resume to find my why, right? I mean, you're the one writing your resume, so you should be writing your resume, based on what your why is, what your purpose is. That's kind of what Kelly talked about when we were kicking off there in that first, one of those first elements he talked about. So I mean, your resume is not going, it shouldn't be directing. Well, I say it should and shouldn't. I mean, you should write your resume and build your resume based on what you want to do, what you want to focus on. you know, and I'll kick it over to somebody else to add in, but before I do, I would just say, also for anybody on the call, just recognize that is one of the resources NSOF does provide. One of those pathways, if you go to nsof.org, is actually resume consulting. So we pay a professional for you, a consultant, to work with you on your resume. So that's NSOF provides that service. It's paid for. I highly recommend it, because I think it was Mike that said earlier, like I rewrote my resume probably, I don't know, 100 times easily before I even retired, and I've written it probably another 100 times since. So I would definitely take advantage of that. You know, I mean, NSOF is here to provide that as a resource. If you haven't already taken advantage of that, we provide it. So all you need to do is fill out a support request on our website, which I'll touch on at the end. But does anybody else have anything to add to that? I mean, as far as that question?
Yeah, I'd just say have conversations, right? Like, it shouldn't be the thing that drives you. It can be a tool into helping you figure out what you want to do, but have conversations like with people here, people in your network. Understand, you know, use it as a tool to find out what you want to do, and then tailor your resume around it. That said, you know, there's so many different options out there. So, you know, talk to someone in finance, talk to someone in government contracting, talk to someone in consulting, talk to someone that works at Amazon or Office Depot, whatever it is, right? If you have the time, have those conversations so you can start to feel out, hey, I like that, I don't like that, and it crystallizes sooner than you think. You know, I walked into interviews and walked out right away saying, I hope I don't get an offer from this place, because I've never worked there. Part of it, you know, it's the job itself, and then also, you know, the environment that you're in. So, but have conversations, find out what people like about their jobs and what they don't like about their jobs, then try and build that resume around it.
Yeah, man, definitely good add there. Another question I got here, and Mark, if you're still with me here, Mark, this might be good directed at you. If I want to work as a civilian within the SOF realm, the SOF community, what is the best way to seek positions towards that end?
Yeah, so I'm still here. Hey, on that last part about resumes, real quickly, there's so much hand wringing over resumes, and as I've helped guys over the years, it's you get so many questions on it, and it frustrates me. I get 20 unsolicited resumes a week. I give them 30 seconds when I look at them. So what you want on the resume, in my view, is your geography, your timing, and your desires. Yeah, you're going to have your education, sure, your experience, yeah, your work history, all that kind of stuff. But if I'm looking at it and I'm going to hire you, your geography, your timing, and your desires have to meet my geography, my timing, and my requirement. So, you know, it should have those things on there, and that's my perspective as someone who, you know, gets a lot of resumes and tries to see if I can either help connect them to someone hiring or if I'm going to be able to hire them. That's my kind of opinion on that one. And then as far as that question that you asked is a pretty broad one. So, you know, without context, you know, I could go a million miles with it, but I would say start off with the Global SOF Foundation, GSF, and take a look at the companies that are in the Global SOF Foundation. You've heard it from all the presenters, all the speakers today. This is all about networking. People don't hire strangers if they can hire known entities. So you either need to be a known entity or you need to be connected to someone who's a known entity. And there are lots of people who will help you. But if you are up against someone else who has a similar skill set as you, and the hiring manager or the supervisor either knows you or knows you by 1 degree of separation, you're going to be better than the other person. So within that question of trying to work in SOF, you know, SOF is a huge world. But I would take a look within, you know, start, you know, you need to network your way in is basically the answer. And if, you know, whoever asked that, if you want to hit me directly and give me some more context, I could probably give you a better answer. Over.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Another one in here, the chat from Todd. So we always say think outside the box. How do you learn how to describe all the soft skills that we have to the private sector? Man, Tough question, a good question. I'll kick it over to the panel first. I probably have a couple thoughts here, but kick it over to one of you first.
I'll take a first stab at that. That's actually one of my favorite things to do when I'm having the initial conversation, because if you really think about it, for the soft skills, all of you come plug and play with them, with leadership, with really great communication skills, with the ability to work across multiple teams. So in our world, it's cross-functional teams. So you work across multiple cultures. So you understand all of the nuances and how to have everybody going in the same direction at the same time. You understand managing assets worth millions of dollars and how to move them, and what it means if your robot breaks and you have to go down range without one, and so you understand how to plan. And so being able to communicate your ability to plan to make high impact decisions, with less than ideal data, leading teams, communicating up and down and across the chain. This is all, these are all the skills that in our world that we look for, because you can't teach leadership and this level of communication and teamwork and organization. And not every graduate that comes out of school has this. They may have a degree, but they don't have these soft skills. And at least in my world, I can teach you the technical part of my job or any other area within my organization. I can't teach you to be a leader. You either have that within you or you don't. And so that's really the best way to translate it, is really speaking to your ability to master all of these skills. And then the other piece of this that I just want to throw in is around the experience. So, when you're looking at a job description and you may be able to check the box out of, say, 5 out of the 8 requirements that they have, that's okay to do, because you can learn whatever that technical requirement is. Because remember, when you went into the Navy as a diver or an EOD tech, you didn't start there. You had to learn, and you had the aptitude to hit that level of mastery to where you needed to be. And then moving around. So if you've held multiple roles, you had to essentially start all over again to become that subject matter expert. And that's something else that you need to be able to speak to as a soft skill, is your ability to learn new skills quickly, master them, and then be able to teach and mentor others. And these are incredibly valuable skills that, again, that you can't teach somebody, that's something that you come plug and play with, that you really need to leverage when you're doing either your informational conversations or you're doing your interviews.
Yep. And then be ready to give examples, because there's likely going to be a follow-up that says, well, give me an example of that. And here's a trap that I would really caution you all on. This, I had this happen to me a couple of months ago. I had a SOF guy call, and he was super upset. He found himself having to evade a question that he was asked because it was a classified situation. And I said, well, how'd you end up in that situation? Well, he started giving combat related answers. And then the interviewer started asking just natural follow-up questions. And then he had basically said, I can't talk anymore about this. And he was super embarrassed about it. So you're likely to be asked for examples that relate to these soft skills, because people really want to connect with your experience and have those answers ready. So then you can manage the conversation versus you get put on the spot and then you come up with the first thing on your mind and that's what comes out, and it's not what you wanted to talk about. So be prepared for those. Give me an example of, and have those rehearsed, have them written down, have them rehearsed, and say them over and over and over again so you can manage that conversation.
That's a great point. And I would add on to that, because some of my guys have had the same experience of how do you handle being able to give an example when it's classified. And you can keep it very high level. You don't have to get into the weeds of the mission or the situation. You can speak to it on a high level of working with teams and working with cross-functional cultures and having to meet a very specific deadline or timeline, and how you worked with the team and communicated to make it happen. So you don't even have to go down the weeds. And then, of course, if they start asking more probing questions and you just can't, you can simply say, I'm sorry, it's classified. I can't discuss more than this. And almost every single person you say that to will completely understand, and they won't, pressure you to provide more. So there are certainly ways to handle that.
Yeah, that's my go-to answer. I could tell you, but I have to kill you, right? That's the go-to.
You don't want to say that to a hiring manager.
Yeah.
Do not take Joe's advice on that.
Yeah.
Like,
No, but I think
I don't want to take Joe, I don't want to take too much, but I just want to tag on a little bit.
Yeah.
Being someone on one side of the table and then being the hiring manager, I've done both sides. Look, ultimately it comes, I do agree, like, look, have a few different, there's going to be the generic, it doesn't matter if you go into consulting, finance, whatever, they're called fit questions, right? So they're going to tell me about a time you had conflict and how'd you manage it. Talk to me about a hard time you didn't meet a deadline. You don't need to dig down into, these super classified times to figure it out. Like, right? Ultimately, it may sound cool and all that stuff, but the point of an interview and work in these situations, you want to build rapport. You want to be relatable. You want to see them as not an EOD tech. You want to see them as their employee, someone they work with. Leave them a little bit to ask you once they've hired you, hey, look, tell me about this time you were in Iraq, Afghanistan, or whatever it is, right? Like, but let that happen down the road. So, the things to have those not gonna say canned answers, but practiced answers on like those types of situations. Happy to go through them offline, but you can definitely Google them. They're called fit questions. Hey, typical fit questions, put into Google, you'll find it. The point is, though, come across as, look, I am, leadership, I'd say, can be a little bit of a loaded question, right? Because yes, you were a leader in EOD. Does that mean you're going to be a great leader when you come into the commercial world? How do you lead when you don't have the background? I'm not going to say don't hit on that, but it's definitely something that you should use as a tool. But start, with building a relationship, being authentic, show how you, as an EOD tech, you're a person that takes initiative. You can find answers to problems. You don't need much guidance. That you're self-aware of the fact that maybe you don't know how to trade equities, how to do a sprint or whatever these consultants talk about, right? But you're willing to put in the work, the time. You're the type of person that will immerse yourself in learning. Like Rage said, the companies know they're gonna have to train you on the hard, Excel and everything else. But they're not going to want to train someone that doesn't show that, hey, I want to be here and I'm willing to learn and I'll put in the time and effort. That's what you're trying to, communicate in those types of situations. So initiative, I'd say, is like number one thing that comes across.
Yeah, like Tor, just to to caveat that, when you were saying that, it reminded me of a couple weeks ago. I had an informational interview with obviously not gonna say his name or anything, but a guy under SOCOM, very accomplished operator. He was a stud. Resume, he was a stud. When he talked to me and the conversation we had, I was like, yeah, man, this is a solid dude, right? He's very smart, capable person, right? But I remember having this informational interview, and I was kind of prepping him for his real interview with the HR folks at JP, and I went through like 15 minutes with him, and it was very I'd say the word is underwhelming, right? It was just like there was no energy, there's no passion, there's no I want to work for JP Morgan Chase because it's an awesome firm and da 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 da. Like I'm talking to him, and I told him that. I gave him that feedback at the end of this interview, and I'm like, hey man, I was like, I know you're good, I know what you did, I know you're capable of coming here and doing this job, but I was like, you can't display that in an interview and a conversation with somebody and act excited and motivated and like you're going to be the person that comes and takes charge and has initiative. Then I mean, yeah, probably not going to be the right person, right? And sure enough, and I did give him that feedback, and then the next week he had his formal interviews and didn't get the job offer, right? So I would just say that is what that to me, that is like, you can't translate a soft skill. Like Trevor, you put in the chat there, comment on soft skills. one of the podcasts I had, there was a guest said, quit calling them soft skills and start referring to the highest. I mean, it doesn't matter what you call them, right? It doesn't matter. You can't translate soft skills. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking for myself. You can put whatever soft skill you want on a resume. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. High communication skills, this does not matter. That soft skills come through in an interview. They come through in you talking to a person. And if you know you're not good at that, you better come up with your pocket stories and your I don't know, do whatever you have to do. But that's what people, if you get lucky enough to get a call back on an interview, like that's how you're going to knock their socks off. Like what Tor just said, they want to know they can work with you. That's all that matters. That's all people really care about at the end of the day. Can this person come into my organization, he or she, and they can come in and be a good teammate? Can they come in and move the needle, right? That's it. I mean, if you got to that point, where you have an interview, like you're already there. Your soft skills are what are going to get you the interview, period. Your hard skill, if you got the interview, and I mean, I'm speaking very generally, obviously, but if you got the interview, like your hard skills, you've got the interview. You obviously meet the criteria, whatever that is, on your resume. Now, your soft skills to me is a person-to-person interview. That is the soft skill. You can't sell your soft skills to anybody. I mean, that's just my opinion. I mean, somebody might want to argue with me, but I don't think you can. It doesn't matter what you write down as a soft skill or, to Trevor's point, a high human trait. You call it whatever you want, but it's not translatable. It's only translatable from person to person, in my opinion. So what are the stereotypes you had to overcome? Again, I'll kind of open this up. Maybe Kelly, haven't heard from you a little bit. What do you think? What stereotypes have you had to overcome at Bain or at Wharton?
Yeah, I think the common one for that is, to your point, Joe, like you lack the technical skill to be there. Like you've been out of the civilian workforce, whatever you're going to do. Maybe you didn't have those early years in Excel or PowerPoint, or at least they don't think that you did, even though we use PowerPoint a lot in the military, right? So I think that's probably the biggest misconception, is that people will view you as this like Rambo, great leader, but they're like, not sure he can actually or she can actually do the work on a day-to-day basis. So I think, to Joe's point, when you get into that interview or you have that, informal, which to Tor's point is not informal, right, conversation, you need to show that, one, either you're like a really fast learner, two, that you're doing things actively that's going to help you close that gap, whether that's going to a formal education, taking online classes, that are offered just on the internet, on Excel, PowerPoint, whatever platform that the company that you are applying to uses day in, day out. Just show them that you have the initiative to learn whatever they do, so it can kind of close that gap for them. But I haven't, I think one of the things I was very worried about getting out, and I think it's a much bigger thing in the military than it is anywhere else, like being enlisted versus being an officer. I think that's something that has really never come up in any kind of conversation. I don't think civilians, for the most part, understand what the distinction is whatsoever. They just think you're in special operations and you must be a Navy SEAL. Everyone's a Navy SEAL. So I think those are the two things. One, highlight that you're a fast learner. And I think, for EOD and diver in particular, it's a very technical job. Either you're dealing with, high risk diving maneuvers or, higher level explosive, theories and technical things. So if you can point to that, you can, translate those skills to any Excel or PowerPoint. The stuff's not hard. You just have to show them that you can learn it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I would say just to build off that, is I don't think it's I think a lot of times people are kind of they get lost on the you want to come in and be a learner. you want to come into an organization and realize that, especially for me, retiring out of the Navy, 20 years, right? For somebody like Mark, right, 20 years in the service, I mean, you get a lot of experience. You have leadership experience. You were kind of at the peak of your career experience at that point in the military. You should be at 20 years, right? So I'd say 2 words come to mind, and that's emotional intelligence. You need to possess emotional intelligence. I mean, there's people, we all know them, right? We don't need to call names, but we all served it long enough and with enough people that, there's certain people that act a certain way, right, in the service, and it works in the service. And I'm thinking more from a leadership perspective, where there's certain leaders that we've all worked for, right, that are in the military. There's a different way to lead people. Leadership is just a little bit different, right? I mean, leadership is leadership, but it's also a little different, right, in the military than in the corporate sector. And when you get into the corporate world, right, you can't lead that way. You can't be the cocky person that knows everything anymore. When somebody says something that maybe you find, the dumb idea or the silly remark or something, you can't respond in the way you used to. So I think you have to have really high emotional intelligence, or at least meet a certain standard of emotional intelligence. And if you don't, I can tell you right now, like, you're just being where I've been in the last 3 years, you are not going to be successful. You just won't be. You might be able to stay in the DoD contracting world, in the government sector, where there's a lot of like-minded individuals. But if you try to take your current mentality and you don't have the emotional intelligence to flex and be agile and change it when you get to a corporate environment, you're probably not going to do well, right? So, I guess I'd say that too. Emotional intelligence is important.
And that's going to get sniffed out in every interview.
Yeah.
Right? You show up, it's kind of back to what we've been saying. You get on an interview with somebody, they're trying to figure out, are you going to be fun to work with? Are you going to be a team player? Are you going to get your job done? Or are you going to be a pain in the rear? And if you show up super cocky, the person's immediately going to think that this is not a good fit. This person's not going to fit my organization, and it's not going to go well. So there's obviously a difference between confidence and cockiness, and you need to have confidence. But come across as cocky, the interview is going to be over within 45 seconds.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I've had a few people. I've had several friends, peers that I was close with, that I respected, that I'm friends with from the community, that I've put into contact with JP Morgan Chase as candidates, right? And I've tried to tell them the same thing that Mike just said, like, hey, you've got to come at this a little differently. You've got to be humble. You've got to understand that your experience, you're starting a new career. No matter where you go, you're starting from, not necessarily from scratch, but you are starting over. And you have to have the emotional intelligence to realize, hey, listen, I'm okay with not being the senior chief anymore. I'm okay with not being the captain anymore, right? You have to have that. If you don't, your people they don't care about they'll respect your military service, but that's not going to be their driving factor in how you perform in their organization. And you have to realize that. So lastly, we got a few minutes left here, but I would kind of maybe end on that conversation with Brage and Mike with that same kind of question. I mean, being that you are the civilians, right, in our panel here, and both at different companies, what would you say to that, I guess, question or that thought of stereotypes? Do the stereotypes exist for military veterans in your companies, or how have you seen that maybe played out in your companies, good or bad?
I actually saw it played out in live Technicolor. I had one of the fellows from THF, who was SWIC, was interviewing at my company, and he literally came plug and play, and the only thing that he lacked was the technical experience, which I already had a plan in place to teach him. And he had already done some research on his side so that he could come in with at least a basic foundation. And when we went to do our debrief panel on the interview, 2 of the people sitting on the panel, their impression was like, well, all he knows how to do is take orders. And, that's all he can do. He doesn't know how to think outside the box. And I was so taken aback by that. But then I had to realize that, I know the community, I know how it works. And these are people where the only way they know how the military works is by watching movies. And so it became part of the debrief became a point of education that's not how it works. Yes, they do take orders. However, here's what it looks like. So when they're given, the responsibility to execute on a mission, they're told what the mission is. They're not told how to do it. They got to figure it out as a team and work through all of that. So they're constantly thinking outside the box. And so it was a little bit surprising, if not disappointing, that some of the people that I worked with actually felt that way and thought that way. And so sometimes, again, going back to what Joe said about your emotional intelligence, and being able to dispel that misnomer, and also to be able to educate. And sometimes that onus is going to have to fall to you, which it shouldn't, but it does just by default, to be able to say, we're not a one-trick pony and all we do is take orders, and then, we're not just robots. Like we're a very dynamic group and we operate as such. And I think that's probably the most prevalent stereotype that I have seen, not just when it played out with my candidate, but I've heard it in other areas as well. And from some of my other guys when they've interviewed, where they actually had to re-educate the person, saying, no, actually, that's not how it works. So Mike, I don't know if you've had a different experience.
Yeah, I mean, listen, within Wells, it's 99.9% positive, because we hire great people that are going to be fun to work with. I mean, we're trying to turn, this is all public, right? We're trying to turn a very large company around. And so there's a lot of that transformation activity going on. So we bring in smart, humble people. So it's 99% positive, but, to Brage's point, I mean, I had to sit a former National Guard communications woman down and tell her to stop referring to soft guys as only wanting to shoot people. And this is somebody inside Wells. And I told her to stop watching SEAL Team 6 and drop the stereotype. And I went to her boss and I said, if she can't drop this bias, actually being a veteran, she needs to be pulled. I'll never talk to her again. So I will never bring a candidate to her. But that's an isolated situation. I mean, we've been very fortunate at Wells. We've got a lot of veterans. They do a great job for us. I've got a handful working for me directly. And so it's been almost entirely positive. So.
All right, cool, Mike. Thanks, man. And Brage. Just in closing, I want to thank all the panelists for taking the time out of very busy schedules to sit down with us today. I appreciate it, as I hope all of you do. We hope this was valuable for you today. Remember to fill out that survey that we send out to you immediately following this. Let us help make this better, because like I said, we do want to keep doing these. So help the people after you. That's what we're all here to do. I encourage all of you to visit nsof.org, navigate under transition programs, and fill out that support request. Whether or not you think you need support or not, just fill it out. We'll get in touch with you. Like I said, if you are a Navy EOD technician or a Navy diver, you qualify for our assistance, right? So whether or not you're in now or you've already transitioned, either one. So even if you don't think you don't need help, I would just recommend you fill it out. If you don't need it, you don't need it. But we can get you linked up with our professional network database we're trying to fill out. We can get you a coach or a mentor, any one of us or a number of other people that we know. So there's a lot of things NSOF can do for you, both financially, from a financial point of view, or a professional resume consulting, like I mentioned, and a lot of other things. So I encourage you to go there immediately following and fill it out, and it ain't gonna hurt. I promise you that. So be on the lookout for the next webinar. We'll be sending out info within the next few weeks, but that'll take place in May. And we're hoping to do this bi-monthly. So every other month, we're hoping to host another one of these. And these subsequent ones, we're going to focus in on these pathways. So the next one we're going to have is the Honor Foundation. So we'll have a few folks from the Honor Foundation, as well as some alumni of the foundation that have benefited from that service. So that'll be our next one. That'll be coming up in May. We'll send out some follow-up information on that. And I'll just put it out to the rest of the panelists. Maybe just say a couple salutations. Any last words of wisdom?
You're not alone. You're not, just like Mark was saying, you're not the first, you're not the last, and you have an entire community waiting for you on the other side. So you've got a community where you are now, you've got a community in the process. We are all part of your mentor tribe, and you absolutely do not have to go through any of this alone.
Let us be your soft spot, right? This is stressful. You're going to make mistakes. Come make your mistakes with us. Let us be your soft spot. We'll be your ear. You can trust us. Try us out.
Yeah. Find us on LinkedIn, find us an email, find us via text, whoever it is, hit up a teammate, find us directly. Happy to just be a resource, even if it's just to kind of shoot the shit, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. Hey, I'll say we've all done this. So this is a period of anxiety, uncertainty, doubt, a little bit of fear. So I think it's good to accept that, recognize it, know that that's normal. Life is all about transitions. Leaving the military is a huge transition. So give yourself a little bit of reprieve. And then I also believe that this is a real squishy thing. It's hard to put your hands around it. So one of the things I ask people to do is look at your geography. Where do you want to live? Where do you not want to live? And try to neck that down to 2 places or so. If you're open to living anywhere, then that entire transition period is going to be really difficult, because you can't solve any of the variables, such as your housing or where your wife or spouse may work or where your kids are going to go to school. So the sooner you can figure out where you want to live and then build your post-military life around that is great. Second thing is timing. We all know how to backwards mission plan in the military, and that's what you're doing here. And the last thing is your desire. So put some effort into what are the things that interest you, what's your passion, your why, and all this will come together, and then you'll be helping other people transition.
Kelly, last word?
I think Mark said it all. Feel free to reach out. If any of us don't know the answer, I'm sure between all of us that we can find somebody who does. So thank you, Joe, for putting this on, and thanks everyone for attending.
Yeah, like I said, thanks again. Lastly, like I said, if we want this to be valuable, right? We don't want to waste your time. We don't want to waste our time. So, fill out that survey. What can we do to make this next one or the next subsequent ones more beneficial for you? And any way we can help, that's what the organization's here to do. So thanks everybody for your time. Thanks for the panelists again, and we'll see you next time.